The Language of Survival, Shunkun no Gengo Episode 2, Two Languages, One World,第2話, Futatsu no Gengo, Hitotsu no Sekai, the prehistoric world did not wait for sunrise. It shifted, slowly, imperceptibly, from the deep black of full night to the particular dark blue of almost morning. The transition was not gentle. It was simply the world's indifference to the concept of rest, cycling through its ancient rhythms, regardless of who needed more time. Amin Parker had been awake for an hour before that shift began. He always was. Act 1, the first lesson, morning, private. The tribe slept deeply. The cave entrances in the limestone cliff were quiet. The fires banked low, the tall silhouettes that had watched the Parkers, with such intense wariness the night before, now folded into their sleeping spaces, with the practiced efficiency of people who understood rest as a survival tool rather than a luxury. The clearing between the caves and the tree line was empty. Amin moved through it without sound. Behind him, after a moment, Mary Parker and Cassandra Brown. They had understood his look when he had glanced at them before rising. The specific quality of his attention that communicated, without words, "Come with me," quietly now. Mary had touched Cassandra's arm. The three of them had moved out of the sleeping area with the particular care of people who had learned that, in a world full of predators, the ability to move silently was as valuable as any weapon. The water source was a narrow stream that ran along the northern edge of the territory, close enough to be practical, far enough from the cave entrances that sound would not carry. They reached it in 4 minutes. Amin crouched at the water's edge, began filling the vessel they had constructed from bark and sealed with pine resin, Amir's design, executed by the 4 brothers with their characteristic silent precision. He spoke Japanese, not loudly, not even at full conversational volume, at the level of sound that exists between speaking and whispering, the level that carries to the person beside you and no further. "Mizu," he said, dipping the vessel. "Water." Mary repeated it. "Mizu." "Hi," he said, gesturing toward the direction of the tribe's fires. "Fire." "Hi," Cassandra said. "Ki." He touched the bark of the nearest tree. Tree. They moved through it this way, Amin naming, the 2 women repeating, the stream's gentle sound covering their voices completely. The lesson was not formal. It did not feel like a lesson. It felt like what it was designed to look like. A family, gathered at a water source in the early morning, talking in the low, easy way. Families talk when the world is still quiet. 20 words, 30, 40. Mary had the pronunciation instinct. She adjusted to the sounds naturally, finding the correct cadence without effort, the same quality that had always made her exceptional at reading and responding to the emotional registers of every being she encountered. Language, it turned out, was not so different from emotion. It had its own music. And Mary Parker had always been fluent in music. Cassandra was precise. Each word landed exactly as Amin produced it. Her attention total, her retention immediate. She had always been the most observant person in any space she occupied. That quality translated directly to language acquisition. "Good," Amin said, in Japanese. "Yoku dekita." Mary smiled. "Yoku dekita," she repeated back to him. He looked at her with the slight tilt of his head that, for Amin Parker, was the equivalent of anyone else's broad grin. They filled the vessel. They carried it back to the sleeping area. The tribe did not stir. Nothing had been heard. Nothing had been suspected. The second lesson. Breakfast time, public. When the tribe woke, it woke all at once. There was no slow, individual process of people drifting into consciousness at their own pace. The tribe lived by collective rhythms. When the fires needed stoking, they were stoked. When food needed preparing, it was prepared. When the day needed to begin, it began, and the transition from sleep to activity happened. The coordinate Ervihi of Pyeongbu had never needed alarm clocks because the world itself kept time. Mary was already at the fire. She had positioned herself there, naturally without announcement, the way she positioned herself and at the center of every space she occupied. She was not performing leadership. She was simply present at the place where things happened. Things happened to gather toward her presence. The tribe's morning meal was simple. Cooked meat from the previous day's hunt, supplemented with edible roots. The tribe knew well and had been generous in sharing. The Parkers had contributed what they could from their own foraging. Amir had identified 3 additional plant sources that the tribe had not been using, which had been received with considerable interest. Amin sat beside the fire. He held up a piece of cooked meat. "Food," he said. Clearly, slowly, with the particular precision of a teacher who understood that the speed at which you deliver new information is as important as the information itself. He pointed to his mouth, then to the meat, then to the people sitting around the fire. Food. The young man, the one who had said go at the end of the previous episode, the one whose auditory retention had first revealed the tribe's capacity for language acquisition, was watching with the focused attention he brought to everything. His ears tracked the word, tracked the gesture, tracked the pattern. "Food," he said. The vowel was slightly off. The D at the end landed harder than an English speaker would produce it. But it was food. Recognizable, intentional, retained. Mary leaned forward. "Yes," she said warmly. She pointed to him, then to the meat. "Food. Good." "Good," he repeated. Something lit behind his eyes that had nothing to do with the morning fire. The lesson expanded naturally from there, the way good teaching always expands, following the curiosity of the student, rather than the rigid plan of the teacher. Amin produced words. The tribe member repeated them. Other tribe members began listening, drawn in by the interaction, the way people are always drawn in by something they don't understand but can tell is important. "Fire," Amin said, gesturing to the flames. "Fire." "Walk," he said, demonstrating with 2 fingers on his palm. "Walk." "Sit," he said, lowering himself slightly. "Sit." The cave woman, who had been watching from the edge of the gathering with the assessing attention she brought to everything, said nothing herself. She was reading the pattern, understanding what was being built. Something in her bearing communicated that she approved of it, not enthusiastically, not performatively, but in the quiet, settled way of a leader who has evaluated a strategy and found it sound. Mary caught her eye across the fire. The cave woman held her gaze for a moment, then returned her attention to the lesson. The 3rd lesson, mid-morning, private. The hunting party left mid-morning. 12 of the tribe's strongest adults, the cave woman among them, moving into the jungle with the coordinated silent efficiency of people for whom hunting was not an activity but a practice. They carried their spears with the casual mastery of long familiarity. They did not look back. The remaining tribe members settled into the day's other tasks, tending fires, working on tools, the various maintenance activities that sustained life in this environment. Prince Parker watched the hunting party disappear into the tree line. Then he turned to find Amin already looking at him. The gesture was subtle. Amin tilted his head toward the tree line to the east, not the direction the hunting party had gone, but away from the tribe's activity, a different direction. Princess had already understood. She moved toward Amir and Amira, touched Amir's shoulder briefly. "Come." And the 3 of them fell in naturally behind Amin and Prince as they moved toward the eastern tree line with the casual, unremarkable ease of people going to collect wood, which was, in fact, exactly what they were going to do. The wood collection was real. Every armful they gathered would be real. The cover was genuine, which was the best kind of cover. When they were far enough from the tribe's sounds, Amin stopped. He crouched, drew in the soft earth 3 Japanese characters, simple, clearly formed, the beginning of what would become an extensive private curriculum delivered in fragments, always in motion, always with a genuine task as cover. "This is high," he said, drawing the character for fire. "You already know the sound. Now learn the shape." Prince Parker looked at the character in the dirt. He was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of a man who is processing something he didn't expect to find interesting, and is not prepared to admit that he finds it interesting. "What are the strokes?" he asked. Amin showed him. Prince drew it. First attempt, slightly off. Second, better. Third, correct. "Again," Amin said. Prince drew it again, correctly. He did not acknowledge that this had been satisfying, but he did not erase it. Princess had already moved to Amir and Amira, sitting between them with the natural ease of a mother with her children. Amin produced the characters for water, tree, and walk. The 3 of them practiced, Amir with the analytical precision that had always made him exceptional at any structured learning, Amira with the sharp, compressed focus of someone who refuses to be anything less than competent, even when she would rather not be participating. "Your strokes are too heavy," Amin said to Amira, quietly, observationally, without criticism. "I know," she said. She adjusted. "Better," he said. She said nothing, but she practiced the character 3 more times. They collected wood for 25 minutes. By the time they carried their armfuls back to the tribe's territory, the 4 of them had added 17 Japanese characters to their vocabulary. The tribe, returning in groups of 2 and 3 from their various morning activities, noticed nothing unusual about the wood collection party. 4 people had gone to collect wood. 4 people had come back with wood. The 4th lesson, afternoon, public. The afternoon lesson was the always did, fullest one yet. The entire tribe, or most of it. A handful of adults remained on perimeter watch at the territory's edges, as they all gathered in the clearing between the cave entrances and the main fire. The feathered dinosaur sat near Mary, close enough to press against her leg if it chose to, which it occasionally did. It had taken to following her at a specific, consistent distance, not underfoot, not at her heel like a domestic animal, but within a range it had apparently decided was appropriate. "Stop," Amin said, holding up one hand, palm out. He had been building toward this command specifically. The tribe had learned food, fire, walk, sit in the morning. These were nouns and basic actions. Commands were different. They required not just retention of the word, but understanding of its function, of the relationship between the speaker, the word, and the expected response. The young man who had first sighed go repeated it immediately. Stop. 2 of the tribe members followed, slower, heavier with the sounds, but present. Amin demonstrated the command actively, began walking toward the fire, then held up his palm and stopped. "Stop," he said. He looked at the young man, gestured for him to try. The young man began walking, held up his palm, "Stop," and stopped. The tribe laughed, not mockingly, not with the laughter of people watching something foolish, but with the warm, genuine amusement of people watching something work. Several other tribe members began walking and stopping spontaneously, each producing the English word with varying degrees of accuracy. "Come," Amin said next, beckoning with 2 fingers. "Come." "Danger," he said, more carefully, watching the faces to see how the concept landed. He pointed into the jungle, made a low sound that approximated urgency, watched the tribe members read the register of his voice and body language, and arrive at the meaning before the word arrived. "Danger," the young man said. He looked at the jungle when he said it. He understood what it meant. "Yes," Mary said. She put her hand on her chest. "Danger," then pointed to the trees, then back to herself. "We protect." The young man looked at her, then at his tribe, then back at her. He did not repeat, "We protect." That was a more complex construction than the morning's single-word lessons had built toward. But he had heard it, and the tribe's capacity for retention, demonstrated repeatedly now, suggested it would not be forgotten. The cave woman sat at the edge of the gathering, watching with the settled attention of someone taking a long inventory. The fifth lesson. Late afternoon, private. The ritual began as the sun reached its lowest afternoon angle. The Parker family had been in the tribe's territory long enough now to recognize its rhythms, the activities that occupied the day, the patterns that signaled the approach of evening, the specific sequence of movements and sounds that preceded the tribe's sunset ritual. They did not understand its meaning. They did not need to. What they understood was that it created a reliable window. The tribe was gathered at the cliff face, focused, ceremonial, fully occupied. Amin moved along the territory's back perimeter, and the four brothers fell in naturally behind him. They had learned to move at Amin's pace without instruction. He moved at the pace of someone going somewhere unremarkable. They matched it. When they were 50 meters from the ritual gathering, moving along the tree line in the direction of the water source, Amin began. "Listen," he said, in Japanese, Kayite. The four brothers listened. He produced a sequence of Japanese sentences, simple, grammatically, clean, the building blocks of conversational proficiency delivered in the way a musician plays scales, not for the sake of the individual scale, but for what sustained practice of scales builds in the hands. The water is north, the danger is in the trees. We move together. He said each sentence once, then waited. Nisa repeated the first sentence, precisely. The same quality that made the four brothers extraordinary in physical coordination manifested equally in this. They processed in the same register, retained in the same pattern, reproduced with the same synchronized accuracy. Nishim took the second, Nimir the third. Shahim waited, then produced all three, in sequence, without pause. Amin nodded. The four brothers did not speak Japanese to each other. They simply held the sounds, stored them with the particular, total attention of people who had learned long ago that silence was not emptiness, but a form of capacity. They continued along the perimeter. Ahead, the ritual sounds of the tribe continued. Behind them, the jungle was still. Nothing had been heard. Nothing would be suspected. Act 2. The T-Rex. It began with the ground. They were well into the evening English lesson. The Parkers had established a rhythm of public teaching that felt, by now, like the natural activity of the shared space. The tribe's young man had graduated to producing 3-word combinations. Fire is danger, food is good. 2 other tribe members had begun retaining words from the afternoon lesson, and were now practicing them in the clearing with the particular energy of people who have discovered something that works. Mary was at the center of it. She always was. She moved between tribe members, the way she had always moved between the family members she anchored, giving attention to each one, reading where understanding was forming and where it was stalling, adjusting the approach without announcing the adjustment. She was not performing teaching. She was teaching, genuinely, naturally, with the full intelligence and warmth that had made her the emotional and spiritual center of every group she had ever been part of. The feathered dinosaur sat near her left foot. Then it froze. It happened before anything else happened, before any human in the clearing registered the change in the world. The small creature's feathers rose along its spine in one smooth motion. Its eyes widened. Its head dropped into a low position that communicated, in the universal language of prey animals, a very specific message. Something is coming. Something very large. Mary looked down at it. She felt the tremor 1 second later, not like the ridge tremor from the escape. That had been geological, diffuse, a shiver moving through the Earth's surface from some distant source. This was directional, rhythmic, the specific pattern of something enormous moving at speed toward a fixed point. 1 step, then another, getting closer, getting louder. Mary stood up straight. She did not say anything yet. She was still reading, synthesizing the feathered dinosaur's response, the directional tremors, the sudden absolute silence of the jungle to the south from which all the ambient sound had been evacuated in an instant. She had been in enough dangerous situations by now to know that the moment between reading the danger and announcing it was as important as the announcement itself. You read it correctly first, then you move. The cave woman was already on her feet. Her spear was in her hand. The movement from sitting to standing to armed had been one motion. The economy of someone for whom this was not a response to a novel threat, but a practiced protocol for a known category of threat. She let out a sharp call. The tribe moved, the Parkers moved. The Parker family shifted into their formation with the ease that weeks of training had built into their bodies, not thinking about the form, simply occupying it the way a practiced musician's hands find the correct position before the conscious mind has finished issuing the instruction. Mary at the center, Amin forward, the brothers on the flanks, Cassandra and Princess behind Mary, Prince at the rear, already reading angles. The trees to the south exploded outward, not the way the Spinosaurus had exploded them. That had been the violent displacement of something moving in a panic through dense foliage. This was different. This was something that did not move around obstacles. It moved through them. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was larger than anything they had faced. That was the first thing the mind registered. Not the details, not the features, just the sheer, absolute fact of scale. It was tall enough that the jungle canopy had been displaced above it as it moved. Its footfalls had not been tremors. They had been earthquakes compressed into a sequence. Its head was the size of a small structure. Its jaw, when it opened in the territorial roar that hit the clearing like a physical force, contained teeth that caught the firelight from 20 feet away. It roared. The tribe's defensive line, assembled in the time it had taken the T-Rex to crash the last 20 feet into the clearing, absorbed the sound without breaking. The cave woman stood at its center with her spear raised and her jaw set, and the expression of someone who had faced something like this before and was still here to have faced it. The T-Rex located the fire. Large predators and the brightest point of stimulus in their disrupted field of vision. The fire circle was blazing. The Parkers had rebuilt it to a substantial size earlier in the day, both for cooking and for the practical warmth of the evening. And to a T-Rex already running hot with territorial aggression, it was the clearest target in the clearing. It charged. The speed was incomprehensible for its size. That was the second thing the mind registered, how something that large could move that fast. The ground shook with each stride. The air displaced in front of it arrived before the body did. It charged directly at the fire. Amin Parker was already moving. He had been reading the T-Rex's body language since the moment it crashed the tree line. The weight distribution, the orientation of the skull, the specific angle of the charge. He had run the calculation in the time it took the T-Rex to cover 15 feet. He stepped to the side, not dramatically, not with any of the spectacle that the moment's scale seemed to call for, just to the side. The Thai Sabaki pivot, executed at a moment calibrated so precisely that the T-Rex's jaw, swinging at the top of its charge, passed through the space where Amin had been standing with 3 inches to spare. He was already in his mabu. His open palms found the side of the creature's passing jaw. The angle was different from the Spinosaurus. The T-Rex was taller, faster, heavier, and its skull geometry was different from the Spinosaurus's elongated snout. He had to adjust. The adjustment happened faster than conscious thought, the product of a body that understood physics, not as a concept, but as a native language. He applied the rotational redirect. The T-Rex's massive skull swung sideways, not fully, not dramatically, but enough. Enough to take the trajectory of the charge 2 feet off its original line. Enough to send the creature's enormous head into the limestone formation at the clearings, edge rather than, through the fire circle and into the tribe's defensive line behind it. The impact with the stone shook the ground. The T-Rex did not go down. Of course it did not go down. It was a T-Rex. The redirect had bought the clearing 4 seconds and sent the creature into a temporary recalibration. That was all. That was what it had needed to be. It shook its head, turned, fixed its attention on the clearing again, and found 12 Parker family members and a tribe of 30 adults who were no longer where they had been 4 seconds ago. The battle that followed was the most complex coordinated engagement the Parker family had executed since arriving in the prehistoric world. The T-Rex was not a raptor. It could not be outmaneuvered through the lateral movement and formation work that had neutralized the smaller predators. It was not a Spinosaurus. It was faster, more aggressive, and its attention was harder to redirect once fixed. It was something the family had not faced before, an apex predator operating at full territorial fury, with the intelligence and the physical capacity to adapt between charges. It adapted. Cassandra read the second charge before it committed. The T-Rex had turned to find the formation spread. The family and the tribe had used those 4 seconds to redistribute across the clearing, removing the concentrated mass that made them a unified target. The T-Rex's eyes moved across the spread formation, calculating. Its weight shifted to the left. "Left charge," Cassandra said, quietly, to her father. He had already read it, but he had heard her read it. He looked at her. One moment, one fractional expression of acknowledgement, and then the T-Rex committed to its charge, and Amin was already guiding the response. "Left flank, back," he said. Princess and the cave woman were on the left flank. They heard it and moved, not panicking, not running, but using the specific retreat redirect that Amin had drilled into the family on the riverbank. They drew the T-Rex's attention, while moving backward in a curve that pulled its trajectory away from the center. "Center, hold," Amin said. Mary held. The feathered dinosaur pressed against her leg, and she kept one hand on it, steadying it, keeping it flat, preventing the movement that would have redirected the T-Rex's attention to the most vulnerable creature in the clearing. "Right flank, press," Amin said. Prince Parker was on the right flank. He pressed, not with anything resembling elegance. Prince Parker's fighting was never about elegance. It was about what his god of honesty had always made him, completely, brutally, uncomplicatedly direct in his engagement with whatever was in front of him. He moved to the T-Rex's right side as it committed to the left flank charge and hit the creature's passing shoulder with the full concentrated force of an Aikido pivot, redirect that he had, under extreme duress and in conditions of genuine danger, finally executed with something approaching correctness. The T-Rex staggered. The shoulder redirect was not sufficient to bring it down. Nothing available to Prince Parker's mortal human body for 2 was going to bring a Tyrannosaurus Rex down through a single strike. But it disrupted the charge. It cost the creature its balance. Seconds. 2 seconds was time. "Brothers," Amin said. The 4 of them were already moving. Nisa, Nishim, Nimir, Shahim, in their formation, synchronized as they had always been, hit the T-Rex's flanks from 4 separate angles simultaneously, not attempting to bring it down, attempting to extend the disruption, each one applying a redirect or a pressure or a direction change to a different point on the creature's body, adding confusion upon confusion, preventing the recalibration that would let it fix on a new target. Rashim worked the outer perimeter, moving with the unpredictable, everywhere at once, energy that had always made him the wild card of the family's fighting unit. He drew the T-Rex's peripheral attention repeatedly, appearing from unexpected angles, creating the impression of a threat without committing to an engagement that his capabilities couldn't sustain. It was, in its own chaotic way, exactly what the formation needed. Amir did not fight. This was intentional and correct, Amir Chambers, highest intellect in the Parker lineage, was doing what his specific gifts made him most valuable for in a chaotic, fast-moving physical engagement. He was watching everything, running continuous analysis, and producing the specific pieces of information that the fighters needed. "It favors left turns," he said from his position behind Mari. "Every piotit maxkos lefe. If you can get it copy that you know which direction it's going to go." Cassandra heard this. She moved to put herself on the T-Rex's right, where a left-turning creature, when it pivoted, would turn away from rather than toward her. The T-Rex pivoted, left, away from Cassandra, toward the open area at the clearing's edge. Princess and the cave woman were already on either side of that open area, the cave woman with her spear angled in a low brace, Princess in her Aikido entry stance, both of them creating a channel that the T-Rex's pivot had aimed it down. The cave woman threw her spear. It struck the creature's shoulder, not deeply. The hide was extraordinarily thick, but it struck true, and the impact added a new stimulus to the already overwhelmed creature's processing. It flinched to the right, away from the channel, into the open clearing edge, away from the tribe, away from the fire, away from the 12 Parkers. The T-Rex stood at the clearing's edge for a long moment. It was not going down. It was not defeated. Mary had known from the first second it appeared that this would not end with the creature overcome. It would end with the creature making a decision about whether this particular clearing was worth the cost of continuing the engagement. The creature was doing what intelligent animals do. When the cost-benefit calculation shifts, it was reassessing. It looked at the scattered formation, at the cave woman with her spear already drawn back for a second throw, at Amin Parker standing in his mabu at the clearing's center, open hands ready, completely and absolutely still. The stillness, perhaps, was what decided it. Intelligent predators understand the difference between something that is frightened and something that is not. The T-Rex had been in this clearing for 3 minutes and had not been able to locate a target that was frightened. Everything in front of it had moved with the specific quality of things that were ready, not running. It was not a calculation that happened in language. It happened in the deepest animal register of survival intelligence. The T-Rex turned. It walked back into the tree line, its roar as it went, the long receding bellow that rolled through the jungle and gradually diminished with distance, was not a retreat. It was a statement. The particular statement of something that has decided to leave and wants everyone present to understand that this decision was made voluntarily. I will be back. On my terms, when I choose. The clearing was quiet. Act 3, Aftermath. The tribe was the first to break the formation, not in panic, in the specific release of tension that follows sustained collective effort at maximum capacity. Several tribe members let out sounds, not words, not anything the Parkers could pass, but sounds that communicated relief and something adjacent to exhilaration, in a way that required no shared language whatsoever. The young man who had been learning English walked directly to Mary Parker. He stopped in front of her, looked at her for a moment, then put his hand on his chest, the same gesture the cave woman had used at the beginning, the first communication of trust, and said one word. The word was not English. It was his language. Mary did not understand it, but she understood it. She put her hand on her own chest, held his gaze. The cave woman came to stand beside the young man. She looked at Mary, then at Amin, then at the clearing around her, the tribe, the Parkers, the space they had all just occupied together against something that required all of them. She spoke to her tribe. Whatever she said, it was substantial. It was not brief or simple. It was the kind of speech that a leader gives when something has changed, when a decision needs to be named and recorded in the shared understanding of the group. The tribe listened. When she finished, several tribe members moved toward the Parkers, not with the wariness of the previous day's arrival, not with spears raised or the defensive calculation of the unknown, with the strength for war acknowledgement of people who have just survived something together and have reached a conclusion about what that means. They were not yet friends, but they were no longer strangers. The English lesson that evening. Around the fire, after the meal, the young man produced a word. Danger, he said. Yes, Mary said. T-Rex, he said. He had heard Amir use the word during the battle. 2 syllables, memorable, clearly connected to the enormous creature. Yes, Mary said. T-Rex is danger. T-Rex is danger, he repeated. 3 words, a complete English sentence, produced accurately on the first attempt. Mary looked across the fire at Amin. He was watching the exchange with the quiet attention he brought to everything. They're learning faster now, she said softly. Shared danger accelerates trust, Amir said beside her. Precisely. And trust accelerates information transfer. The neurological pathways for language acquisition run parallel to the pathways for social bonding. When both are activated simultaneously, they learn faster, Amira said flatly. That is essentially yes, Amir agreed. You could have just said that. I could have said it with less accuracy. Amira said nothing, but she did not argue the point. The intensified lesson. Late evening. Privet. The tribe's fires burned low. The Parker family had moved to the perimeter of the territory, ostensibly to check the night's defences, a task that Prince had assigned with his characteristic, blunt precision, and that provided excellent cover for the actual purpose. They stood in a loose group at the edge of the tree line. The tribe's fires were visible behind them, warm, distant, not close enough to carry sound. Amin looked at his family. The world is getting more dangerous, he said, in Japanese. Sakai wa moto kikena ni nateru. He had said it simply, without drama, as a fact, the way he stated all facts. We are going to work harder in the evenings, he continued, still in Japanese, the rhythm of it becoming more natural with each lesson. Not just words, not just characters, grammar, structure, the ability to have a full conversation in Japanese that no one around us can understand. Prince Parker absorbed this. How long until fluency? He asked. His Japanese was rudimentary still. He was working from the foundation of the afternoon's grammar lesson, the characters in the dirt, the vocabulary accumulated in fragments over the day. But he asked the question in Japanese, which was progress. N1 proficiency, Amin said, takes years of dedicated study for an adult. We have time, Prince said. He said it the same way Mary had said it on the riverbank when Amin had told her the martial arts training would take years. Amin looked at his father. Yes, he said, we do. The lesson continued in the darkness at the territory's edge, grammar structures, listening comprehension exercises where Amin spoke, and the family identified words and meanings. The slow, patient construction of something that would not be finished tonight or next week or next month, but that was being built correctly from the foundation, the only way that anything lasting is built. The tribe did not hear. The tribe did not suspect. In the morning, when the English lesson resumed, when the young man and his people gathered around the fire to add new words to the bridge being constructed between their world and the Parkers, they would see a family that spoke English to them, with warmth and consistency and no indication that anything else existed, and it would be true. English was what the tribe would learn. Japanese was something else. Japanese was what the family was becoming quietly in the dark. The T-Rex called out, from far away, from deep in the jungle where it had gone, from whatever territory it had retreated to after the clearing. The sound was distant enough to be non-threatening, but it was there. A reminder. It had been in this clearing once. It would make its calculation again. The feathered dinosaur pressed against Mary's side at the fire's edge, heard the distant call and did not move. It had apparently decided that Mary Parker was a more reliable variable than anything else in this unpredictable world. Mary placed her hand on it. It settled. She looked at the jungle, at the world that did not know them, at the immensity of what lay ahead, not just the predators, Not just the cavemen, not just the physical demands of survival in a world with no infrastructure and no medicine and no margin for error. All of that was real. All of that was a constant, but underneath it, running through it the way a current runs through water, invisible but present and defining everything above it, was something she held on to the way she had always held on to it. In every era and every trial and every impossible room she had ever walked into, she breathed, the fire burned, the jungle breathed back, and in the distance, the T-Rex's roar faded into the ancient dark. A promise, not a conclusion. The story of the Parkers in this world had only just begun. End of episode 2. 2 languages, 1 world. 生存の言語第2話。二つの言語、一つの世界、太古の世界は、日の出を待たなかった。それは、ゆっくりと変化した、深い谷中の黒から、キャマ家の特定の濃い頃へ。変化は穏やかではなかった。それは、単純に、誰が休息を必要としているかに関係なく、古代のリズムを循環させる世界の無関心だった。パーカー・アミンはその変化が始まる生き圏前に起きていた。常にそうだった。第一目最初の授業。朝、秘密。不足は深く眠っていた。視界源の下の洞窟の入り口は静かだった。火は低く抑えられ、深夜にパーカー家族をそのような強い恐怖心で見つめていた手の高い赤は、今眠りの中に折りたたまれていた。洞窟の入り口とメイスのラインの間の空き地はこうだった。パーカー・アミンは因なしにその証言を働いた。後ろに少し線を置いて、パーカー・メアリーとブラウン・カサンドラ。彼らは彼が立ち上がる前に彼の実践を理解していた。今年でなしに、一緒に来い、静かに、今すぐと伝える忠義の特定のシーン。パーカー・メアリーはブラウン・カサンドラの場に触れた。水言は不足の領域の悲嘆によって流れるスカイ湖側だった。私文で到着した。パーカー・アミンは水辺でしゃがんだ。祝日と高知で封じた容器を満たし始めた。日本語で話した。大行にではない。会話レベルですらない。スースと彼はいい。容器を気にしながら。パーカー・メアリーが繰り返した。リゼー、ふと彼は、不足の日の方向を示した。火とブラウン・カサンドラが言った。と彼は言い、最も近い意味の初期に触れた。彼らはこのように住んだ。パーカー・アミンがママエンを呼び、二人の女性が繰り返した。川の穏やかな音が彼らの声を完全に張った。二子玉、三時玉、四書玉。パーカー・メアリーは発音の本能を持っていた。自然に音に調整した。ブラウン・カサンドラは精味だった。カクテヨがパーカー・アミンが生み出したものと同じように着地した。よくできたとパーカー・アミンは日本語で言った。パーカー・メアリーは美子なんだ。よくできたと彼女は彼に繰り返した。彼は彼の頭のわずかなかぬきで見た。パーカー・アミンにとってそれは誰か他の人の広いヘミに相当した。彼らは容器を満たした。眠り場所に運んで戻った。不足は描かなかった。何も聞こえなかった。何も座れなかった。第二年の授業。長時期公開。不足は一度に目覚めた。緩やかな個別のプロセスはなかった。不足は集合的なリズムで生きていた。そして睡眠から活動への異性は、世界自体が時間を刻むため、指揮を必要とした人々の調整された効率で起こった。パーカー・メアリーはすでに火のそばにいた。パーカー・アミンは火の隣に座った。調理した肉の1切れを持ち上げた。 food、食べ物と彼は言った。はっきりと、ゆっくりと、口をせさした。それから肉を、それから火の周りに作る人々を。food、前の羽子と言った若い老いのことは集中した注意で見ていた。food と彼は言った。パーカー・メアリーは前に軽いた。Yes、はい、と彼女ははぶかく言った。food、good、良い。good と彼は繰り返した。fire、パーカー・アミンは ne、顔を示した。walk、歩く。sit、作る。不足は繰り返した。笑顔だった。協力的だった。日本語は話されなかった。洞窟女は端からすべてを観察していた。その態度は精進を伝えていた。演技的にではなく、戦略を評価した指導者の静かな、落ち着いた方法で。第3の授業、午前中、秘密。周りのパーティーは午前中に出発した。洞窟を含む不足の最も強い証人士2人、無言の調整された効率で植物の中を働いていた。パーカー・プリンスは、パーカー・アミンが急に彼を見ているのを見つけた。死振りは微妙だった。頭を筆の米のラインにか抜けた。守りのパーティーがうなった方向ではなく、不足の活動から離れた方向。パーカー・プリンセスはすでに理解していた。チェンバース・アメアとキャンベル・アミラーの間に触れた。来て、そして三人は集めに行く人々の自然な雰囲気で、パーカー・アミンとパーカー・プリンスのほどに移った。無の周期はペンブだった。集めるすべての心らは本物になるだろう。カバーは本物だった。それが最良の種類のカバーだった。不足の日から十分に離れたとき、パーカー・アミンは止まった。しゃがんだ。柔らかい図に描いた。三つの日本語の文字。シンプルではっきりと形成された。これは価値だ。と彼はいい火の文字を描いた。すでにオダドは知っている。今、生を学べ。パーカー。プリンスはトゥのワンジをキャンタ。ビシュンハ。トゥビハクシュンネタ。パーカー・アミンは見せた。パーカー・プリンスは描いた。最初の時にわずかにずれていた。2回目良くなった。3回目制約だった。もう一度とパーカー・アミンは言った。パーカー・プリンスは再び制約に描いた。それが満足のいくものだったとは認めなかった。しかし、消しもしなかった。パーカー・プリンセスはチェンバース・アメ、あとキャンベル・アミラーとの間に自然に作っていた。リズ、メキ、歩くの文字を練習した。チェンバース・アメアは分子的な精密さで、キャンベル・アミラーは参加したくないかのように鋭く圧縮した焦点で、しかし3回以上追加で文字を練習した。彼が重すぎると、パーカー・アミンはキャンベル・アミラーに言った。静かに、観察的に。知ってると彼女は言った。調整した。良いと彼は言った。二女子無分感銘を集めた。不足は何も気づかなかった。第一の授業。午後、公開。午後の授業は最も充実したものだった。ストップ、止まれ。とパーカー・アミンは言い、手のひらを上げた。若い男はすぐに繰り返した。ストップ。パーカー・アミンは積極的にコマンドを実験した。火に向かって歩き始め、それから手のひらを上げて止まった。ストップ。若い男を見た。腰すよをまみふりした。若い男は歩き始めた。手のひらを上げた。ストップ。そして止まった。不足は笑った。不足と共有された何かが機能するのを見る人々の温かい本物楽しみで。感銘規定とパーカー・アミンは言い、2本の筆で毛抜きした。デンジャー、危険。デンジャーと若い男は言い、 ジャングルを見た。Yes とパーカー・メアリーは言った。We protect 私たちは守る。洞窟所はチェアに作り、長い在庫を取っている誰かの落ち着いた注意で見ていた。取り物の授業、午後遅く。秘密。医師は午後の太陽が最も低い角度に達した時に始まった。パーカー・アミンは領域の候補境界固有を省き、死兄弟が自然についてきた。聞いて、聞いて、と彼は日本語で言った。死兄弟は聞いた。彼は日本語の文の連続を生み出した。シンプルで文法的にきれいで、会話の吸収度の構成要素を音楽家がスケールを演奏するように届けた。水や下にある。危険は模擬の中にある。私たちは一緒に働く。パーカーにシールが最初の文を繰り返した。捨て役に。死兄弟を身体的調整においてピンがずれたものにした。同じガジがここでも現れた。同じ登録で処理し、同じパターンで保持し、同じ同期した正確さで再現した。パーカーにシームが2番目を、パーカーにミルが3番目を、パーカー・シャヒームは待った。それから3つ全部を糧をしょかずに続けて生み出した。パーカー・アミンは寒いた。何も聞こえなかった。何もだわれないだろう。第二波テイラノサウルス地面から始まった。夕方の英語授業の途中だった。パーカー家族は今や自然な活動のように感じられる公開共有のリズムを確立していた。若い声のが苦の組み合わせに進んでいた。Fire is danger. 火は危険。Food is good. 食べ物は良い。パーカー・メアリーはその中心にいた。常にそうだった。雨のある恐竜は彼女の笹なしの近くに作っていた。それが放った。他の何かが起こる前に、人間が世界の変化を感じる前に、小さな生き物やがなが菊椎になって一つのはらかなト書きで立ち上がった。その目が広がった。頭が低い位置に落ちた。刃物の動物の普遍的な言語で非常に特定のメッセージを伝えて、何かが来ている。非常に抱きながかが、パカメアリハキャンシアロした。1秒法に振動を感じた。方向性があった。リズミカルだった。巨大な何かが固定点に向かって速度で働いている特定のパターン。一部、それから次、それから次、近づいてきて、大きくなってきて、パーカー・メアリーは立ち上がった。まだ何も言わなかった。まだ読んでいた。髪のある恐竜の反応、方向性のある振動、男のジャングルの突然の完全な沈黙を統合して、洞窟女はすでに持っていた。強を手に、作ることから、立つことから、無双することが一つの動作だった。グセイ呼びかけを発した。不足は働いた。パーカー家族は働いた。パーカー家族は数週間の訓練が体に作り込んだ容疑さでその体制にシフトした。そうについて考えず、ただそれを締めた。パーカー・メアリーが中心に、パーカー・アミンが前に、兄弟たちが側面に、ブラウン・カサンドラとパーカー・プリンセスがパーカー・メアリーの後ろに、パーカー・プリンスが後方にすでに各部を読んでいた。男のめき出しが安側に爆発した。これはスピノサウルスがメキを爆発させた方法ではなかった。それはメナ思想の中でパニックで何かが働くことによる暴力的な変異だった。これは違った。これは障害物を回避しない何かだった。それらを通り抜ける何か。テイラのサウルスレックスは彼らが直面したどんなものよりも大きかった。それが最初に心が登録したことを、生物ではなく特徴ではなく ただスケールの純粋な絶対的な仕事、毛で十分な高さ、植物の寛解が目で変微されるほど、その足元は振動ではなかった。集中した連続の地震だった。それは吠えた。普通の方位圏派、T レックスが吐き地に死とするのにかかった時間で組み立てられた。鈍らずに音を吸収した。洞窟女はギアージを上げ、悪を決めて中心に戻っていた。T レックスは火を見つけた。大きな富士社と事業の中でとも明るい式典。火のトは燃えていた。そして領域的な攻撃性で熱く走っている T レックスにとって、それは空き地の中で物も明確なターゲットだった。と信した。パーカー・アミンはすでに働いていた。T レックスがその方向に実務フィートを移動するのにかかった時間で、体重の分布、倒壊の付録、都心の特定の角度を読んでいた。横に働いた。劇的にではない。がだ、横に、体さばきのピボットを、沖縄で茜に何年もかけて叩き込まれた。設計線から外れる一部、T レックスの悪がパーカー・アミンが戻っていた空間を3インチの余裕で通り過ぎる瞬間に調整された精密さで実行された。彼はすでにマフにいた。開いた章が通過する T レックスの分の側面を見つけた。老け直した。T レックスの巨大な頭蓋が横に働いた。十分に。吐き地の半の視界眼の行に、土金の軌道を向けるのに十分に、火のロランと後ろの不足の方意見ではなく、顔への衝撃が地面を揺らした。T レックスは倒れなかった。もちろん倒れなかった。テイラノサウルス・レックスだった。向け直しは吐き地に使命を飼い、生き物の一時的な再調整に送った。それだけだった。それがそうある必要があっただけだった。頭も振った。向いた。再び空き地に注意を固定した。そして主婦2人のパーカー家族のメンバーと30人の精進の不足を見つけた。使命前にいた場所にもはやいない。続いた戦いは、パーカー家族が現実時代の世界に到着して以来実行した最も複雑な調整された強戦だった。T レックスはラプターではなかった。より小さな不死者を無理化した横声援の鳩書きと体制の指示事を通じて出し抜くことはできなかった。スピノソルスでもなかった。より薄く、より攻撃で、一度固定されると注意を向け直すのが難しかった。すがりへのドシンとブラウン・カサンドラは言った。静かに、主に。彼はすでにそれを読んでいた。しかし、彼女が読んでいるのを聞いていた。彼女を見た。一瞬、認知の分数の表現。そして T レックスが都心にコミットし、パーカー・アミンはすでに応答を身にちぎっていた。昨夜つ、交代と彼は言った。中心、保持と彼は言った。パーカー・メアリーは保持した。雨のある恐竜が足に押し付け、彼女は一方の手をそれに置いた。安定させ、彼らに保ち、その働きをほぬいだ。唯一、押せと彼はやうつた。パーカー・プリンスは有益にいた。押した。洗練など全くなかった。パーカー・プリンスの種合いは精錬についてではなかった。直接的邪魔されず、目の前にあるものへの完全で、残酷で複雑でない直接的な関与についてだった。合気道のピボットの向け直しの前期中した例で T レックスの通過する早をずつた。T レックスはよろめいた。T レックスを倒す者は、パーカー・プリンスの無駄しすべき人間の体に利用可能なものではなかった。しかし、土金をはざげた。生き物認知病の維持停止を与えた。
兄弟たちとパーカー・アミンは言った。死人はすでに働いていた。パーカーにシール、パーカーにシーム、パーカーに見る、パーカーシヤヒム。類死でチャンにそうだったように同期して、T レックスの側面を2つの別々の角度から同時に撃った。それを倒しようとしていない。混乱を延長しようとしていた。パーカー・ラシームは外部境界を働いた。常に彼の戦闘ユニットのワイルドカードでどこにでもいた。チェンバース・アメアは戦わなかった。これは意図的で正しかった。パーカー家族の支部で最高知能のチェンバー、スワバハ・カウスです。クドンクブリード、ナジャオザルヨイツシブゲにある贈り物のために何をするかをしていた。すべてを見て、継続的な分析を実行して、展示が必要とする特定の情報を生み出していた。レクターンを好むと彼はやった。パーカー・メアリーの後ろの位置から作るすべてのピボットがされに行く。ピボットさせることができれば、どの方向に行くかわかる。ブラウン・カサンドラはこれを聞いた。T レックスの理由に自分を置くようにふがらいた。ザクターンの生き物がピボットしたとき、彼女から向かってではなく離れて吹くように、T レックスはピボットした。仮に、ブラウン・カサンドラから離れて、洞窟女は強を投げた。生き物の間に当たった。深くではないが、正確に。インパクトが新しい刺激を加えた。T レックスは冬にひるんだ。チャンネルから離れて、開いた空き地の端に、T レックスは長い空き地の端に戻った。倒れていなかった。倒されていなかった。パーカー・メアリーは、それが最初に現れた最初の絵だから、これは生き物が克服されることで終わらないと知っていた。それは、生き物がこの特定の空き地がコストの価値があるかどうかについての決断を下すことで終わるだろう。T レックスは評価していた。散らばった体勢を見た。もう一度投げる準備ができた洞窟女将。空き地の中心にマフで待つパーカー・アミン、開いた手が準備でき、完全に絶対的に静かに。ペザケサがおそらくそれを決めた。知的な捕食者は恐れているものとそうでないものの違いを理解する。T レックスは向いた。メケナチのラインに持って歩いた。そのポーション、長く後退するジャングルを通り抜け距離とともに徐々に小さくなる鳴き声は絶対ではなかった。それは生命だった。戻ってくる。私の条件で、私が選ぶとき、空き地は静かだった。第三名誉カバ不足は最初に体勢を崩した。特定の解放の中で、最大能力での持続的な集合的努力が続いた後、いくつかの不足のメンバーが思を発した。パーカー家族が開始できる言葉ではなく、しかし共有された言語を全く必要とせずに、と何か公用に隣接したものを伝えた言語といった若い女の子はパーカー・メアリーに直接歩いた。彼の前で止まった。それから後に手を置いた。洞窟のが最初に買ったのと同じジェン・レイフ・ソーシー・シー・ユーヤ・トゥ・イン・ユー・ディヘン・カツナ。彼の言語だった。パーカー・メアリーはそれを理解しなかった。しかしそれを理解した。胸に手を置いた。彼の目線を保持した。洞窟女は若い女の子の隣に来た。パーカー・メアリーを見た。それからパーカー・アミンを見た。それから彼らが一緒に立った日に秘めていた泣き血を見た。不足、パーカー家族、彼らを全員必要としたものに対して共に占めていた空間。ヌハブツにふわした。火をやんつたとしても、それはしせでだった。 それは何かが変わったとき、決断が命名され、グループの共有理解に記録される必要があるとき、指導者が与えるスピーチの種類だった。不足は聞いた。彼女が終わると、いくつかのフスのメンバーがパーカー家族に向かって働いた。前日の到着の境界心ではなく、強が上がった方位的な計算でもなく、一緒に何かを生き延び、それが何を意味するかについての結論に達した人々能力な証人で、まだ友人ではなかった。しかし、もはや見知らぬ人でもなかった。その夜の英語授業かけのそばで、市議との後、若い男はこことは生み出した。Danger, Yes とパーカー・メアリーは言った。T-Rex、チェンバース・アメアが戦いのけ、その言葉を使っているのを聞いていた。ニミョンセツ、記憶しやすく、巨大な生き物に明確に関連している。Yes とパーカー・メアリーは言った。T-Rex is danger。T-Rex is danger と彼は繰り返した。だが、完全な英語の文。最初の試みで正確に生み出された。パーカー・メアリーは火の向こうでパーカー・アミンを見た。ヘラは今より早く学んでいると彼女は静かに言った。共有された危険は信頼を加速させると、チェンバース・アメアは止めないで言った。正確に。そして、信頼は情報戦争を加速させる。言語習得の神経経路は社会的版の経路と並行して走る。両方が同時に活性化されると、より早く学ぶと、キャンベル・アミラーは限らに言った。それは本質的に、はい、とチェンバース・アメアは統一した。キャンベル・アミラーは何も言わなかった。しかし、その点には反論しなかった。強化された授業。夜遅く、秘密、不足の日は低くなっていた。パーカー家族は領域の境界に移動していた。ヤモギ向きは夜の飽愛を確認するため、世界はより危険になってきているとパーカー・アミンは日本語で言った。簡単に言った。ドラマなく、仕事として、夕方により懸命に取り組むと彼は続けた。まだ日本語で歌手業でリズムがより自然になってきていた。言葉だけではない。文字だけでもない。文法、構造、周囲の誰も理解できない日本語で完全な会話をする能力。パーカー・プリンスはこれを吸収した。流暢になるまでどのくらいと彼は尋ねた。日本語でまだ初歩的に。しかし日本語で尋ねた。N1 の吸収とはとパーカー・アミンは言った。証人にとって専念した研究の年月が必要だ。時間はあるとパーカー・プリンスは言った。彼はパーカー・メアリーがトゥエアンでパーカー・アミンに武道の訓練が年月かかると言ったときに、彼女が言ったのと同じ方法でそれを言った。パーカー・アミンは服を見た。そうだ、と彼は言った。私たちには。授業は領域の反応ありありで続いた。文法構造、パーカー、アミンが発して、家族が本言葉と意味を、フィーを特定するリスニング理解の練習、今夜や来週や来月に終わらないが正しく、基盤から構築されている何かのゆっくりした忍耐強い構築。それが唯一の方法だった。不足は聞かなかった。不足はあだわなかった。朝に英語授業が再開したとき、若い音と壁の民が二つの世界の間に構築されている橋に新しい言葉を追加するために火の周りに集まるとき、彼らは希釈さと一貫性と他に何も存在することを示すものなしに英語で話す家族を見るだろう。そしてそれは真実だろう。英語は
不足が学ぶものだった。日本語は何か別のものだった。日本語は家族が静かに彼女の中でなりつつあるものだった。T レックスが呼んだ。遠くからそれが入った空き地から離れたジャングルの深い緒からリマインダー、この空き地にいたことがある。自分の計算を再びするだろう。パーカー・メアリーの手されに押し付けたためのある恐竜は今日は呼び声を聞いて動かなかった。パーカー・メアリーは毛を吹いた。それは落ち着いた。彼女はジャングルを見れた。自分たちを知らない世界を。来ることの広大さを不死者だけではなく、学巨人だけではなく、余裕なし、医療なし、構造なしの世界での生存の身体的な要求だけではなく、しかし、そのすべてを通じて、それを通り抜けて走っていた、目に見えないが存在して、上のすべてを定義する天竜のように、何か彼女が常にそれに固執していたものがあった。彼女は火を使った。火は燃えた。ジャングルは蜂を返した。そして遠くで T レックスの褒章は古代の芦屋に薄れた知論ではなく約束として、パーカー家族のこの世界での物語はまだ始まったばかりだった。第2話終わり。2つの言語、1つの世界。